And then how many people went on to change other people's lives from one spark, one heart opening experience.
Mm.
And the ripple effect is real. And so when you're talking about the financial struggles and the endurance and the like having to ask for help and the spiritual journey, but also like the practicalities of going like, I am worthy enough to have help and like going about like getting that help and getting in front of the right people who can offer mentorship and support and partnership and financial support and like not being afraid to ask for help, especially when you have such a big mission.
For everyone out there, it takes a lot less energy to surrender to the moment than it does to hold on and force things. In the last 14 years of my life, in the last 38 years of my entire life, the greatest single obstacle that took me the most energy was my own insecurities, worries, um, not thinking that it's going to work.
Welcome to the Conscious Creative Podcast, your weekly dose of soul to soul conversation that will have you saying peace out to your 9 to 5 to explore in your sacred calling. The topics center around conscious business and interviews with the folks who started them. We'll be exploring the art of being human and what it takes to live your life fully expressed and financially free.
Hi, welcome to the Conscious Creative Podcast. I'm Christina Gomes. This is my homie, Matthew Michael. Matthew Medicine Michael. We're going to talk today about all sorts of cool concepts on conscious creativity, but I wanted to start off.
I haven't gone by Matthew Michael in a couple of years.
Oh my
I
God,
go
what's
by
your name?
Matthew Eklund, Matthew Gordon Eklund.
Oh, his original name, his
Yeah.
name on Facebook. Redo.
We have a lot of history.
Yeah, we met, and I don't even know if I knew your name. I just knew you as like the song guy that threw a pine cone at me. And plus, with the Dow has no name, and we're going to talk about the nameless Dow. We're talking about that
the way,
today.
the way that we unfold.
Unfold. And so, why don't we start with yeah, like how we met and how we came to be conscious creators in all sorts of different realms. I've seen you in so many different journeys, so many different modes of Matthew Gordon, Eklund, Thomas Jones, Christina Gomes. Bill. But I've seen you grow so much, and I wanted to invite you here today to talk about friendship, to talk about psychedelics, to talk about the Tao, to talk about tea, and to talk about the way that journeys weave.
Yeah. Well, I'm super grateful to be here. We've been friends for a really long time. I've watched you grow in so many ways and evolve and be successful and musical and just share all of your gifts with the world. And um, we met each other in 2017 at the Oregon Rainbow Gathering, shortly near July 4th. We were throwing pine cones at each other at the Hare Krishna camp, Hare Krishna. And I think we were high on LSD and we were just having fun and frolicking. And at this time, I had purchased what is now Arco Isis Sanctuary. It's a transformational center that I've built over the last 8 years. And I think I passed you a sticker and we remained in contact. And Christina ended up coming down. She was one of our first guests when we were still building. It was all tents and dirt. And she ended up leading her first retreat ever. The first ever retreat that happened at Arco Isis was Christina's retreat. And since then, wow, so much has happened. And I think that's an interesting thing. Like both of us in our lives, we've traveled, we've done things, we've kind of had a spontaneous flow of life that's happened and shaped us over the years. And it's really interesting how we're here now in 2025, 9 years later. Um, you've had success with your coaching and teaching people, empowering others to share their gifts with the world and to make a living doing it. Myself, we've created Arco Isis. we've had thousands of guests, and we've, people come for transformational healings, for yoga teacher trainings and medicine, whatever they come from. It's an alchemical portal here at the lake, and part of the reason why I love it here so much. Like, so much growth happens here, and yeah, exciting.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have this conversation because actually I have this gift of remembering when I've met someone, when it's like a soul connection that's going to expand you in so many ways. Like, there's a moment that sticks in my mind of meeting someone, and maybe you have that gift. I don't know who has that gift, but I'm like, wow, yeah, everybody that I've interviewed and that I want to interview, I want to like kind of call that forth of like how these connections are made and how we end up like going on these incredible journeys from one chance meeting and the synchronicities of it all. Because honestly, my business blew up here and at Lake Atitlan. This is where I started. Yeah, offering retreats. It was my first retreat ever and the first retreat at Arcoisis. But I had been teaching yoga around the world, but it was the first time that I was like, I want to do something bigger. I know there's a bigger life for me. I want to do something bigger and I want to settle down. And so looking at that sticker and remembering meeting Matthew Michael, wait, how do I say your name again?
My name is Matthew Gordon Eklund. I took on the name Matthew Michael for a few years. It's interesting because people were calling me Michael, and so many people were calling me Michael that I was just like, okay. And there's actually our friend Rob, and he's like, you're Michael. He's like, you have an Archangel Michael in you, or some association. And I had some interesting experiences with Archangel Michael. And so I took it on as a second name for a while. It was like supportive for my growth to kind of take on this name of someone who is an archangel, attributes of valor and of Archangel has his sword of truth, which is also my Nawale, my Mayan cosmovision horoscope. Essentially, is the obsidian blade, which is that which separates and penetrates and surgically removes what's false and what's the illness from the body. And so I took on the name Matthew Michael. My birth name is Matthew Gordon Eklund. Gordon's my middle name. Eklund is Swedish. It means land of oak. Didn't think I'd be introducing my name, but
It's interesting because so far, this is what we've been talking about. I interviewed Nacho the other day, which Nacho is such an interesting name,
yeah.
But he changed his name to Nacho because nobody could pronounce Narchis. And it's like, and then we've all been calling him Nacho. He's also been here for like the entire time that we've been here, and we've been calling him Nacho. And it's like, actually, we could dive into this for a moment because I know that you named Arcoisis in a very interesting way as well, and like the naming of things and like the naming of our businesses and the naming of our programs. And I wrote a book that Matthew Michael's well, he's Matthew Michael.
You can call me Matthew Michael.
You call me Michael. My arm Michael, but like honestly, if we're gonna go right into this story, but like he was my archangel in one of these stories, the story of the toad. So I wrote a book called The Monk, the Mushrooms, and the Toad. And the story of the toad, like, it was such a profound experience. And Matthew was one of the only people that got to witness me in this like wild, expansive, like psychedelic space with the DMT, 5-MeO DMT, the strongest psychedelic known to man. They call it the God molecule. And like I was screaming, oh my God. But then like when I was coming to, like homie imprinted on me, his cute little face, and we all had these like sparkle teeth. We all had these sparkles on our teeth, and his sparkle tooth like rainbow out in the fractals. And I was like, but ultimately, like coming back to the name, it's like when I saw the sticker Arcoisis, I had been working with the goddess Isis. I have the goddess Isis, for those of you on video, tattooed on my thigh. But like all of these synchronicities, like what I teach on now and what I'm infusing into all of my work, all of these synchronicities, like we get to pay attention, we get to follow the signs. And success is not just embedded in how much money we make, or, he has an amazing retreat center on the side of the mountain. And it's like very successful, but success for us, for folks like us and for folks like you, is really embedded in like the beauty of these synchronicities and following the signs and continuing to grow and be fulfilled and expand and have moments of contraction. We've had so many moments of contraction together, but ultimately, because we've chosen this path. And so you've named yourself, you've renamed yourself, you've been gifted names. But how did you come up with the name Arco Isis? Because at the time there was like some resistance to that name because ISIS didn't mean so much.
The Islamic State of whatever ISIS means in the terrorist group. We're not affiliated at all with the terrorist group.
No,
we're not. Yeah,
worship goddesses.
So to back it up, when I was 23 years old, I started my first company off food stamps. Basically, I had no money, and I started Rainbow Cloud Kombucha, and I designed the label, created this thing. I was selling kombucha at farmers markets and festivals, and I grew this company all the way up to a 4,000 square foot warehouse from working in the graveyard shift at an ice cream factory for 4 years. And at that stage, I was like, this isn't for me, but I was having so much outward success. I was like, how could I never imagined that I'd be running a beverage company, which is kind of funny because now in some weird way, I do also have a beverage company.
Tea company.
I was listening to everyone around me, and my heart started to like go quiet, which had been really alive for me. I'd been traveling and hippie and using a lot of medicines, and was really solid with my inner guidance. And when I stopped listening to it, I had a few years where everything was a little bit hazy. And fortunately, that too is the path. Sometimes when we're in dissonance and we're living out of sorts with ourselves, that too has meaningful lessons and stuff. So I was introduced to Guatemala by a girlfriend that had lived down here, fell in love with the place. Later that year, the girlfriend and I broke up. I sold all my things in Olympia, Washington, and I moved away to yoga school. And I did a bunch of advanced yoga teacher trainings. I was already a yoga teacher at that point since 2012. So I came down back here to the lake with a good friend who I met at yoga school named Nicholas John Bauer. We became really good friends. We met on the supermoon on the beach at yoga school. He had driven there from Milwaukee to the tip of Baja California on a flat tire on a donut. Like just crazy guy. You know, he just showed up at the kirtan one day while we were in class. So we hit it off really well. And we're like, hey, I know a place where we could host our first transformational retreat. And we did a 7-day retreat at our friend Joshua's Golden Temple here in San Marcos, which was also the place where I had my first retreat when I came down here the year prior. Around that time, I was like, I want to get out of the kombucha company. I had some money saved up from a bunch of endeavors, and I had the intention to buy some land. Like from college, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment. I was like totally isolated. I wasn't vibing with the college. You know, I was kind of just partying and whatever. And I was like, something, you know, my friends and I were like, it'd be cool to own land and start growing things and have like a commune type thing. And so that was the original idea. Later that evolved into like a spiritual community when I started following Paramahansa Yogananda. I studied a traditional yogic path of Kriya Yoga. And so they were living on an intentional community, all practicing yoga, singing and meditating together. So that idea evolved into, oh, this could be like a spiritual community. So around that time, we led our first retreat. It was a huge success. And a really interesting story happened about how I found the land that was Arco Isis, but it was another one chance opportunity. I met the town gangster, and I didn't know who he was at that time. His name was Chico. He's infamous in this very small town. It's not like an organized crime type thing. It's like a little villager. But this guy had been in jail more times than he'd been out of jail. And I didn't know that. And he asked me for some money for some beer on the street as I was passing on the hippie highway one day. And I stopped and I said, no, but if you teach me Kekjikel, the local, this village language, in the next village they speak Sutuhil, if you teach me Kekjikel, I'll pay you money. So this guy was teaching me in the town square Kekjikel, and I was taking notes, and I think we did like 2 lessons or something. And I was staying at Jaguar Tree up in Barrio Dos and I talked to Tarn, the guy who owned the place, and I was like, this guy Chico is my Keck teacher, and he's British. He was in his British accent. He's like, not the Chico that's been in jail more times than he's been out of jail. And it turned out it was that guy. And so I was scared. I didn't know the town real well at that point, and I wasn't really plugged in like I am now. Like I have really deep connections with the indigenous community here now, 8 years later. But sure enough, I had told Chico where I lived, and so his friend Ezekiel, a couple days before, was like, "Hey, if you're looking for land, I got a friend who's selling some land." And so he knocked at the door the next day or so, and I was just terrified to go because Tarn told me that this guy robs people in the valley or whatever, and I was just like, ugh. But sure enough, Tarn accompanied with me up the mountain, and we went to one place, and then we went to the place that's now Arco Isis, and it's about a 15-minute steep hike up from the nearest road. Like, it's a pilgrimage to get up there. It was just a monoculture coffee plantation with about 25 avocado trees, and I went up there, and I gave it some thought for a couple of weeks because I had just about enough money of what they were asking for the place, and ended up saying yes. My whole life changed. I said yes, and I feel like a portal opened up. Like, I had no plan. I had an idea to build a community, but there was a lot of retreat centers in the area that was like a template. So I was like, well, we could generate income if we have retreats here. Like, okay, we can build a platform and the community can run this retreat center. And it was like kind of shooting from the hip. It was like the next step. I have this skill about me that's kind of shoot first, ask questions later, and just go for it. And I don't really think things fully through, and I think it's worked in my benefit. If I had hindsight of what that project would have actually entailed, I probably never would have embarked. So if you have something in your life that you want to go for it, just go for it. Shoot first, ask questions later, clean up the mess if it falls apart. I've had plenty of things fall apart. So anyway, this retreat center started happening, and I was going to call it Arco Iris. This was back to your original question. Arco Iris means rainbow, the arc of the eye in Spanish. My company, kombucha company, was called Rainbow Cloud. And Nick, one day, he met up with me on the town. We were going somewhere, and he's like, so you're going to call the place Arco Isis? And I was like, whoa, like, that's kind of edgy, like, interesting. And one interesting thing of why that was significant was the year prior, I was in a very powerful mushroom medicine ceremony, a psilocybin mushroom ceremony. And in that ceremony, the symbol of Isis came to me as a logo in my inner vision. And it was so clear to me, I was not aware of what the symbol was. It was the Ankh, the Egyptian Ankh with wings. And later, after I got back, I was at the Verizon store because I lost my cell phone, and I showed up, and something guided me. There was two options to go to two Verizon stores, and I went to this one, and I literally walked up, the guests had left, and he's like, hey, and he had a tattoo of the Ankh with wings. And I was like, dude, I saw this in ceremony. What is it? And he's like, this is the symbol of Isis. And I was just, wow. So something resonated with me in that moment. And I had just taken like the first sunrise picture. It's a really beautiful viewpoint property. It looks over the entire Lago Atitlan from a whole forest. And I had just started Arco Iris Sanctuary on a first piece of the thing I was working on in Photoshop for like a poster. And I changed the Iris to Isis, and all this energy flooded up my spine and into my head. And it was just, I was like, whoa. And I changed it back to Iris, and I was like, Then I changed it back to Isis, and I was like, wow, okay. Like, Arco Isis was born. And since then, it was a very difficult building process over 7-8 years. We're 8 years in now. We're finally at like full cruising altitude. We have a full organization up there. We have an incredible staff of like 12, 13 guests. We've had dozens and dozens of clients over the last 7 years. We've had all the initiations of learning how to run a retreat center, funding it, running out of funding, basically going head over heels into debt. Like, another interesting story was I I was running out of money. I had booked the place out before we had even built the temple, and we had just tent spaces. And all of our friends here are yoga teacher trainers and facilitators and all sorts of, like, even Christina was leading retreats. And it's this really tight community. So everybody kind of gets to know each other, and they're like, oh, you have a retreat center. Okay, I can do my retreat there. And so I had booked the entire place out before the place was built, and I ran out of money. And again, Nicholas, the key instrumental person here in this journey, he was like, why don't you just ask for some help or ask for money? And there was something in me that at that time, I was like 28, about 10 years ago or 8 years ago. I just couldn't ask for help, couldn't ask for a loan. Like there might've been some like unworthiness thing there or something, but I had to ask for a loan because I had to have it ready for Christina. And I asked my godparents for a loan. They were the first person. They loaned me $7,000. And I was like, woo! Like I got advancement on it. And I was like, wow, I can ask for help. So over the next 3 years, I ended up taking out 9 hard money loans, like cash loans from friends, family. I had strangers reach out. And I ended up with like over $250,000 in debt to friends, not just like credit card debt. And between that, running the place, launching my own retreats and residencies, and just being kicked in the butt so many times of initiations.
We're on a spiritual journey here too.
I was at the end of my rope. And I was calling in a partner. I knew somebody needed to share this place with me because it was such a heavy load for one person to carry. I was calling it in, and Travis, my now partner, came in about 4 years in. He matched every dollar that I put into the project at that point, and has just been an incredible partner in that journey. So that's a lot about the story that I've gone on. I could just continue to talk, but let's have this be a two-way conversation.
Because it's such a great, what you're saying here is so beautiful for my people watching and listening, because I work with both of these in both realms of like, what are the practicalities? What are the real initiations that happen when you're wanting to create something that maybe you don't have a template for, it's never been done before, like you're an innovator, a visionary, and you're really wanting to make this project shine. And when you said, like, I just said yes, and you said, and my whole life changed, I also was like, right, one yes not only changed your whole life, but changed my whole life, because I got to come here and start my business off with this retreat and continue to go. And like how many lives I've changed, how many lives our retreats together have changed, and then how many people went on to change other people's lives from one spark, one heart opening experience. And the ripple effect is real. And so when you're talking about the financial struggles and the endurance and the like having to ask for help and the spiritual journey, but also like the practicalities of going like, I am worthy enough to have help, and like going about like getting that help and getting in front of the right people who can offer mentorship and support and partnership and financial support, and like not being afraid to ask for help, especially when you have such a big mission. Because you saying yes and then you continuing on this journey, it's changed my life, but you are an integral part of changing my clients' lives, those people who say yes to my programs. And a lot of those people have gone on and asked their people for loans to be able to invest in themselves in ways to learn this kind of expansion that you can really only get from people who have gone first. So we've really walked through the fire of our own blockages of like, am I worthy enough to get this support? Like finances coming out of nowhere just to be able to support this creative life, because folks like you and I are unemployable, and the people that I work with are unemployable. Like we employ people, we treat people as assistants who love working with us, and we are creative visionaries. And honestly, like I'm truly unemployable. I think you employed me once and like I became unemployable. Like I was running his social media.
That's right.
And it's like, we don't even remember that because like I'm not neither are you. But like that pivotal moment when you say yes to something that you know is going to be hard, but it's your mission, like it is so worth it. And you're still saying yes to things, and you're still finding different ways that it's been worth it and it continues to be worth it. But you've actually now opened up more things and created another beverage business from saying yes to this. It's more than a business. This is a calling. So by saying yes to this calling that wasn't easy, now you've been called to tea. So why don't you say a little bit about that road?
Wow. Yeah, just taking a moment to just like this conversation is drawing a lot in. Like sometimes as a creator, I don't reflect so much on what's been created or the impact on it. So getting a like nice reflection because I'm always thinking about the next like I'm obsessed about
Capricorn in some ways.
Like I'm very here, like almost myopic, and I'm always just what's the next step? What's the next, thing? And it's funny that you mentioned tea. Tea has completely taken over my life in the last 4 years. And I find it interesting. Tea was the first company that I started. It was really with kombucha. The main ingredient is tea, and tea is the Chinese tea plant. It's a very specific plant that is what is matcha, what is red tea, oolong tea, pu'er tea, green tea. It's the same plant, and how it's processed becomes that style of tea. In the West, we associate tea with different herbs, and this goes into like traditional Chinese medicine. They use a lot of herbal concoctions and remedies to balance the elements within the body. The tea plant, in traditional Chinese medicine, is like the definition is it's the empress of all herbs. It has all 5 elements. It balances the body, and it was originally used as a tool for meditation, as a plant spirit medicine, like thousands of years ago. And tea made its way into my life, I think the most when it was in my awareness. I think I had some like past life karma with tea in other lifetimes. But I like we go back to like listening to that burning desire inside of us, and how we uncover that burning desire is through a process of self-distillation, of distilling the shoulds, the societal conditioning, the parental conditioning, our childhood wounds, distillation of that to where we get to our core soul essence. And I got to my core soul essence at an early age through psychedelics, through plant medicine, psilocybin. Later, and probably most profound was for me was LSD. I've eaten LSD hundreds and hundreds of times, and it led me to yoga. It showed me inner realizations that confirmed like my yogic path. Like I had yogic archetypal visions of the Om symbol. And tea, so I've had this whole journey with medicines, ayahuasca. It's been a large part of my life, and what I want to share with the world is now there's a medicine renaissance happening with plant medicines. I also think LSD is an incredible teacher for me, and it's also just important to listen to that inner guidance of what is true for you, as we all have different medicines, and some medicine for me is not medicine for you. But tea, Camellia sinensis, the Chinese tea plant, found its way to me in a ceremony. This was practiced from a Zen Buddhist lineage that's similar from Japanese origins. And I sat in a silent meditation with tea as the medium. And the experience that I had drinking this tea and sitting in a meditative state, I found myself in a super expanded space where time and space stood still, and I felt really high. And the only thing I could do in this moment was basically release all the stress that I had within me. And I had this huge emotional cathartic release, and just was like healed in that moment, in front of this woman who then later became my girlfriend and kind of initiated me in these practices of tea. And I received it so deeply, and it was like the spirit of that plant was telling me like, hey, listen, this is valuable. And what I love about tea is such a subtle medicine that so many people, it's the most drank beverage, even over coffee, worldwide. that people are drinking every day. And the context in which this medicine is drank really magnifies or minutes the effect. People can drink it like coffee on the way to work and be in their beta, brainwave state, doing other things, going about their day. Or when you focus and sit in a meditation, I have a big history with yoga, meditation, and Vipassana, Buddhist meditation. Wow, it really amplifies and accelerates the meditative mind, which can take, some time and cultivation. Of anybody who's tried to meditate, it's kind of difficult. Well, with certain types of tea, I'd say certain types because a lot of the tea nowadays is conventionally farmed, it's chemical ridden, and the pesticides and herbicides in your body make the body more agitated. So really clean, natural sources, often from wild trees and such. My journey into the tea world just went 9 levels deep, and tea people out there can understand how much there is to learn about tea and to become absorbed. But I began to sit super deeply with tea, and it was actually a perfect time because I was 6 years into building Arco Isis. I was completely burned out. I was just, my adrenals were fatigued from all the coffee drinking. Here comes a helicopter. I wonder if you guys can hear it. Flew right overhead. And I was about to break or have a breakdown, and I've had multiple breakdowns in this journey, but I knew that I had this realization that unless I cultivate the quality of my mind, nothing that I achieve, nothing that I gain or acquire. I had a perfect girlfriend, it was harmonious. I had this brilliant house mansion that I built on the center that I created. I was making a dramatic impact. I was still neck deep in debt and without money, but I was just drilling my energy down to where I had nothing. And so I basically stopped my life. And I discovered Vipassana meditation. It was about 4 years ago. And all I did was do this ceremonial practice. I learned from this guy named Wuda, the teachings of Wuda, which was my girlfriend at the time's teacher. And for about 2 years, I just stopped. I put my life on hold. I put all my aspirations, the way that I was doing life, that I thought that this was going to make me happy. It was like, no, you really do need to cultivate that landscape within. And so the tea, my relationship with tea as a medicine has grown so deeply, where now I hold ceremonies and I have an online tea company that's dedicated to sourcing what my favorite tea is, vintage pu'er. It's the pu'er cakes that are pressed into cakes. It's from a region in Yunnan, China. And these cakes are aged, indefinitely. There's 100-year-old teas out there. So I created a company with a friend who's a professional nature photographer, and we were on this epic backpacking trip out in the Olympics, overlooking Mount Olympus. And we decided to create this small company called Mountain Sanctuary Tea, and it was based on really clean teas for meditation. And that company didn't get any traction. We had it for about a year, and still my relationship with tea was deepening, and I was getting a lot of traction sharing tea down here in Lake Atitlan at different events and at my place. And so about a year later, my friend said he wanted to focus energy on a book. He wanted to quit. So I moved Mountain Sanctuary Tea, the company, down here to Lake Atitlan and started the Mountain Sanctuary Tea Temple. And then I started a niche pu'er company called Pu'er Medicine, pu'ermedicine.com, and on Instagram, Pu'er Medicine. And that instantly got traction. And it's been about a year since running that company. I've in building Arco Isis, we've always put the money back into Arco Isis, so I've never actually received money yet. I see it coming in about 1 or 2 years. But I've started 4 other companies in the process of trying to create income for myself while I'm devoting all my energy into this big project. And that started with teaching online classes. I was actually one of the first people to take her course. I've taught several online classes and courses, from meditation to yoga to how to buy land and build a creative center, build a eco village. Had some success there, but it was just like, one-off type stuff. And with the tea company, it's really my passion. I've been going over to Asia for 3 years now and sourcing, meeting with the Chinese tea community and studying tea arts. And it's just interesting how your path winds and weaves, and to stay true to that deepest calling. And one thing might be alive one moment, and then something else will be alive the next. And the sooner you can let go, if it's a real like priority, like, oh, I play piano, but now guitar is really calling to me. But if I stick with piano, even though it's not alive in me, if I'm afraid to let go of that, I had to let go of my kombucha company, which I had for 7 years, that had 15 employees and a full warehouse. Like, it was a lot to let go of so that I could be fully down here for Arcoisis Sanctuary. And I think it's a constant state of surrender of your identity and who you think you are. Like, maybe one day the tea won't be so alive for me, even though I'm so living and breathing it right now. But then you can always come back. And I'm picking up piano again. I let go of it for a year and a half. And so just distilling oneself to be able to listen to your heart, to your gut, and to make those decisions that you need to make. Because once you start listening to that voice, it gets louder and louder. And once you start making decisions away from that voice, in my experience, that voice gets really quiet and it becomes very dissonant. And even those times of dissonant where your spirit's not speaking to you is part of your journey to learn, So I've gone on detours, and even the detours is the way. Like, we spend some time suffering or having a heartbreak. And even that too is the Tao. And so
I love that so much that you said suffering, because we talked about that last week in my interview with Nacho. And I think it's such a poignant message. I mean, the Buddha shares this message of suffering, but with conscious creatives and multi-passionate people, when we are not bringing forth what is gnawing away, pulsating from the inside out, we end up suffering from that. There are some of us, a lot of us, maybe even all of us, actually, I believe every single human on this planet is here to create something meaningful. And yet, not everybody will initiate that or activate that in their life. But most people who are resonating with my message come across me. I don't have a big audience, but I have people that are just like, yes, it's you. You're my guide. You're the one. Because of this message, because I've gone through so many ebbs and flows of listening and not listening, just like you were saying, of hey, I know there's a next era. I know there's something I'm supposed to be teaching on and learning. And my clients come to me too. They're like, maybe they've been in this niche, or they've been, had a brick and mortar, or they've had this job that's, it's been fulfilling to a point. It's not a bad job. I was a psychotherapist before I quit everything, quit a high paying career. Like, it wasn't a bad job. I was doing good things in the world. But when we don't listen, actually the universe comes and gives us shocks. So it goes from dissonance and suffering to like, bitch, get up and do your mission. Loud and clear, like, I got attacked on the job, and it was like, that's it. You have to go. You have to leave this position, and you're not listening. And so whack-a-doodle. And like, that's what I'm hearing for you, of like, well, we can spend years. I spent a year suffering in this job before the universe was like, okay, actually pain's going to move you. And then I still like suffered trying to like hold on to something that was no longer aligned, because it was not so bad. It was not a bad life. And so I help those creatives who are doing fine. They're like, yeah, it's just like I have this like crushing knowledge that there's something more out there for me, that I could be living more on purpose, that I could be speaking more truth, that I could be getting on a platform and like sharing my voice, or like singing a new song. Like, you've studied tea, even though you were doing great with music and you put music aside for a year. But, coming back to like how our paths have woven together over the years, I just find it so fun, because I live here with Matthew. I've come here because Matthew like had this retreat center. I decided to stay here, and then all of a sudden I'm in Bali, and and I'm like at this cafe and I see my bestie like at the cafe. And then he's like in this world famous band, actually. He's in this world famous band for music, the Hanuman Project. And I'm like there, you know, kind of like a lost puppy in Bali because these are my people, but I'm not integrated in the community yet. And then like I got my bestie who is in a band that's like well known there, like really killing it. And he's like the pianist, like he's in like so much pain. I know him. I know he doesn't walk like this. He's like limping, dragging his leg behind it. And I'm like, bestie. And we're just like, you know, living our lives in a whole new dimension, a whole new realm. And then going to the what's the famous festival there? Bali Spirit Festival. And I'm like backstage everything because I'm like, yeah, friends of the band. I'm just like stage. I have no tickets, but like I have this energy about me of like, yes, we're musicians, we're creatives, like we belong. And that's really, really hard for people. It's been hard for me, even though you might not think it, of like, yes, I belong. You belong in the room. You belong backstage. You belong on the stage. And even if you have to put the music away for a year, I guess that was a year and a half ago, but it was so visceral in my memory because I was like, yeah, just chilling with the Hanuman Project, like getting into all these things and feeling like really integrated, more integrated in the community because, yeah, I wasn't just like a passerby of like, hey, like, you know, I could be creative and I could be a singer and I could share my voice and I could create. I'm like, no, opening doors. And it takes like this balance that I think we both have of like, I belong here. I'm here to create, but also this humbleness. Like, you know, there's nothing, I didn't think I was better than anyone else because I was backstage. I just thought, like, yeah, this is where I belong with my people. Like, thank goodness, because it's sometimes hard to be on the outside. But I want to say this now that the only person that leaves us on the outside is us. And it's that card in the Osho deck, the outsider card. That's like this little guy on the outside of the fence, and there's a lock on the gate. But the lock is unlocked. But it's like it takes us actually being aware that we do belong, that everybody here has a mission, everybody here is here to create something. And it's like this who at 41, 40, I wrote this book at 40. Well, I've been writing it for 5 years, but who writes a memoir? And you're just like, you know, you haven't even lived half your life, and you're like, oh, a memoir. It's like because we can get on a stage, because you can use your gifts to make other people happy or experience something or transform in some way. So I'm really proud of you for that message that you were sharing of like that listening aspect. And also the thing that I want y'all to know about Matthew, and so that you can get a good transmission from this, is like, yes, like when you start listening to like what is my thing, you really nerd out and study these things. Like what you were just talking about, T, was like the nerdiest thing that I ever heard. But it's like because you're not just like half, what my mom says, like half-assing things. You're like, okay, I'm listening now, and so let me go fully into it. I've done that with astrology. I'm like, I'm listening now. I am meant to teach on this. The stars are calling me home every moment, every breath. This is in a majority of my songs. I have this line in my songs as well. It is like no matter what, we get to take what's alive in us now and create something. So I don't know if that was a question or a remark, but
Perfect.
something's coming through for you. I can feel it.
We take what's alive
Mm,
in us now,
mm,
and then we follow that. And what I was thinking of for people out there, like the biggest shift for me that has made the space to listen, because like from music to life, to your calling, to what's alive in you, it comes from listening. In our culture, especially with all the tech, the social media, we have this influence that is more distraction. We see people doing other things, so we think that we're not doing enough. We look at other people's lives on the daily, like I can look at 200 people's lives, you know, and that creates high beta frequencies in the brain, very analytical, fast. And then we've got like our coffee here, this blessed medicine also creates a consciousness in mass that everyone's hustling and everything's difficult in the Western world. In the United States, we've been living here in Guatemala for 8 years, and it's a lot cheaper to live down here. And I argue that life is a little bit more fulfilling for me. But in the States, when we've got a $2,000 a month rent with $800 groceries, with the car payment, with the cell phone payment and the insurance, and like life is difficult, how do we even make space to listen? And it may seem that when we're on this treadmill and we're over caffeinated and we're chasing, I spent a good amount of my 20s kind of chasing, like feeling like I wasn't fully embodied in my skin yet. And I had a lot of influence of these medicines and things, but I was still kind of in this energy of chasing things and running after things. And I think that's also part of the journey of distillation, is understanding your patterns and living through them long enough. But the single most piece of advice that I could get, however you can, that's changed my life, is to slow down and make space, empty space for the cultivation of things to grow. And when we're constantly filling space, we're constantly working, we're just in it, and that space could even look like 20 minutes a day. It could look like meditation. It could look like a yoga practice. It could look like eating some psilocybin mushrooms and taking a day off to gain a new perspective and to take a moment out of our established neurological patterns, preferences, and cycles in the brain to discover a new pathway, to maybe see life with new eyes, and to discover that soul essence of like, whoa, I thought all these layers were me, but really it's all just conditioning. And tea for me is my daily practice, where I wake up in the morning, I get problems at 5 a.m. We've had 40 people living at our home for 3 weeks. We've done this for 6 months on end. It's a lot. Like, I have a full staff, I have guests, there's problems that happen every day. And so for me, taking a 20-minute meditation to have tea and to do it in a ritualistic way, where the only thing I do is make tea, or having a yoga practice, even 30 minutes, and someone, I think Tony Robbins, one of my mentors, said, if you don't have 20 minutes, you don't have a life. So we're constantly jam-packing our schedule, but what's happening is we're depleting our essence so vast that we're not actually operating with even a half tank. Like, we're running on empty with nuked adrenals. There's more uncertainty in the world than there's ever been. And, all you got to do is wake up and look at this, and I'm reading about stuff in Congress. I'm reading about stuff that it does not affect me today. It's not I'm reading about stuff in Asia or wherever, Mexico, somewhere that's just not here right now. And so ways that you can create space within to remove weeds, remove negative patterns, remove unworthiness and conditioning that we've got. Like, this has been a part of my journey that's been the most important, was really like the emotional journey. Like, I was from like age 10 to 23, I was emotionally numb as a man, as a young teenager. I numbed every single emotion, and I was just fully anxious, and I was just locked in my shell until I really started finding, it was really my first day at yoga school, yoga teacher training. I'd been practicing yoga, so I was opening up my body and my pathways inside for years. And my yoga teacher just cracked my eggshell, and I realized that I had some resentment from my brother from the crib. And it just like created a program that just like shattered all of the processes. And I literally started to go through emotional processing, and that's marked a 14-year journey of me using psychedelics, using medicine, using alchemical practices like breath work, vipassana, together with people and community is very important, and the support, and back to like, you always belong. Like, you always belong when you know who you are, but you don't always belong in places. Like, you're not always meant to stay in your hometown. You're not always meant to stay in a social group that you're only there to feel safe, when you're really supposed to grow out of that pot.
Mm.
And I think that's been a big distinction of, as you start to distill yourself and cultivate yourself, your friends will change, or they'll hold you back. Like you're starting to vibrate at a higher space, but no one around you can relate. Well, maybe it's time to open up some space to have new connections with people who can vibrate on your wavelength and then support you and help you grow. Because here in Lake Atitlan, you know, I take it for granted sometimes because I live on the mountain, but I have my own small community. Community is what we've really been lacking. And then also community on a frequency of aliveness, of forward thinking, of acceptance of things like kind of woo-woo stuff that I'm particularly into. Community is very important, and it's important to find fertile ground for you to grow in. And so don't be afraid to let go of the things that make you feel safe, of the people that make you feel safe in your life. Like my journey has been a long time of being by myself, of focusing only on my dreams. And in the process, I know who my friends are, because the ones that I have time for that resonate with me are the people that I don't have to try hard to be friends with, like Christina. We just get each other, we're real. And when you start owning your own innate frequency and allowing yourself to be that, and just to be without the need to reduce your frequency for others to please or to fit in, all of a sudden all these new people will come to you and they will support your journey, and you will be inspired by them, and you will take other paths in life that will lead you down other rabbit holes. And this is something that I've lived for, you know, the last, since I, you know, became autonomous from leaving home. So
Leaving home, all paths lead to home.
right.
We just have so much in common because as multi-passionate creatives, like I just said, all paths lead to home. And that's a line from one of my songs. And we met singing songs. And I remember when we first met, you had said that you had just started writing songs. Now he's a brilliant musician, like on the piano. He's like this he's a musical genius. I mean, I don't know what he's doing on this thing, but it's like ripping on the piano. And it's like, how does that work? How does somebody's mind work like that? And my mind works a bit different. Like my mind works in words. Like I definitely am a writer, songwriter, and luckily I could carry a tune and got better at singing. But to be able to capture these words and to be able to capture the essence of life and wrap these sounds around language to be able to make meaning. I mean, it takes us back to naming things, and it takes us back to like the original source, which is like we are here to make meaning, and we get to make the meaning of our life that we want to make of it. And a lot of people come to me like, oh, I'm a multi-passionate creative, so my course isn't going to sell because it's not just on one thing. And this is why I work with multi-passionate creatives, because there's nothing that is going to separate me from the song, from songwriting. And even though maybe I've taken a break, I'm a little blurry, excuse you can't see me, but there's nothing that's going to separate me from songwriting, because that's what we all are. We all are meaning making creatures. We all are primed for language. And we're here to express ourselves, really. And so, even if I've taken a break from writing songs, I haven't written a song in a while. I recorded an EP a couple of years ago that I never did anything with, but like, this is okay. Like, not every project is meant to be a business, but as long as we are living our sacred calling, you and I are still expressing. You and I come together and create a podcast. You and I might come together and make a song. You and I might come together and sing a song. We did a retreat, a residency years ago where there was just so much singing, but a lot of people came and found their purpose and then went on to become facilitators. And like moments like this, togetherness of like taking time out of the scroll. Like we've been so, I mean, I love the scroll. And this is why I also like make memes, because I want to capture your attention in one bite-sized little lick of my words, you know, like, hey, like I've been making astrology memes that are touching people's heart and touching my own heart, making them. And it's been so beautiful. But I love just luxuriating in our story together. And remembering where we've come from and taking this time out to not only remember where we've come from in this journey that we've gone on, but to also impact people's lives just because we're here sharing our story together and like allowing, not allowing, but inviting you to remember where you've come from, inviting you to remember that you're going to live a million lives, and you might even make $1 million and lose $1 million. You may impact a million lives. But ultimately, what I'm hearing from T, from songwriting, from creating this podcast, that the more and more that we get into the present moment, the more and more that we take time to create. And this is why in my offerings, there are 2 hours a week that we get together and we are speaking. I'm teaching, where we're talking about these things. We're talking about the stars, but I'm making it very personal for my clients. And I know their astrology charts and I know their visions. And it's like that enough is going to catalyze and initiate you into things that you might not have even thought about, because it is in the overthinking that we hold our offerings back, whether it's a song you want to offer, whether it's a program you want to offer, whether it's a retreat you want to offer, whether it's an entire tea company that you want to offer. Like, living your sacred calling, some of it is going to make you money, and some of it is going, and all of it is going to make you money, because the songs that we've written together and the songs that we've sung together and this song that we're creating right now, it leads to abundance. It leads to more people understanding the value of what we do is beyond just one tea plant. The value of what you do and your tea company is like, I met you in Bali because you were there on an adventure looking for tea. Mm-hmm. And you're also playing music, but like you're there on an adventure. You're going to go back to Asia to learn like the depths of tea, and like your facilitators and your mentors and the people that you come across, like they've spent thousands and thousands of hours learning different things, and we can't even call ourselves masters. I have a master's degree, but we can't call ourselves masters. And I wanted to kind of weave that in, like we're on a path of mastery. That's what I'm hearing from your story, is you are on a path of mastery. And it's like, it'll take you to songwriting at one point. At one point you were the DJ of the DJ of the moment, you know, at one point your people want to relate with you. And like, I know I'm on a path of mastery to better love. And I haven't even really begun that journey yet. Like I haven't even really fully like begun like this relational journey that I know that I'm meant to step into. But we are both on the path of mastery as conscious creators. And so I wanted to know if you could speak to that a little bit, like, because you probably sit with masters, and with tea and the Tao, like there are masters, you know, and the Zen Buddhists, there's masters. So what's your ideas or concepts around this path of mastery?
Well, it's an interesting question. I thought of my teacher, who's a Zen Buddhist monk. He said, the only masters are dead. Until you die, you're a student. And the beginner's mind of being wide open and receptive is the path to mastery. Like the minute we know everything, we shut down. And you find this in the tea community quite a bit. You find this in the gardening community quite a bit. And you find this in the cooking community. The people who are head chefs, who are head gardeners, and a lot of tea people, you can't tell them anything. And so it's like, you know, versus people who have the beginner's mind are truly the greatest masters. They could be 80 years old and everyone could look at them as a master, and they could just be open. Like the energetic effects of tea and the cultivation of the Tao, the way of tea, is to cultivate that receptive mind. Same with psychedelics. What I love about LSD or psilocybin is it relaxes all of my precognitions to where I'm just receiving the moment now, almost free from any supposition or anything that I'm putting on it. And it's like I can see the world with eyes of a newborn child. And that's very helpful because we get so ingrained in our patterns. Like when you know it all, what else is there more? You know, when everything is known and you've attained so-called everything, there's no place to put anything more. And so it's really this process of emptying continually surrendering everything that you know, and to be receptive to another way, like maybe your way that you trained in tea, like traditional this way. Can you see from another perspective? Can you put on someone's head and see how that may be true as well? And so the cultivation of receptivity is the path of mastery for me, to continually be open to the truth as it changes. And the truth is full spectrum. There is so many people out there. Everybody's sharing some facet of truth. And I feel like that is my path, is continually letting go of the things that I start to cling to as some sort of identity or some sort of title, or like the more that I have, like I'm the owner of a fairly successful establishment here. I'm in a position of power, of authority. But if I start to wear that on me, it'll be heavy. If you want to be the king, the crown is heavy. It's better to be the servant. And to me, the way of tea and the way of the Tao is to be of service to the Tao, is to be of service to humanity, to put yourself below. And it's not that we're you know, unworthy. It's just that when you do have the power of God within you, that power has to come with humility, and it must come with surrender. Like, as drops of the one consciousness, we surrender to the ocean. We worship and bow to the ocean, because we're a drop. We are a singular drop of the ocean. We're not the entire ocean. And you know, if you get up into the ocean consciousness, you know, you got to be careful, because the only way, when things are totally perfect and when you're in the top, the only place from the top is down. So, you know, when things are in perfect order, this was a very special lesson that I learned as I was a huge perfectionist. When everything is perfect, the only way for them to go is out of order. So when you're, you know, when your house is fully clean, spick and span, and we have a practice of cleaning in the tea tradition, the only thing that can happen is something makes a mess again, and then you clean again. So it's this process of distilling all these parts of ourselves to become an empty vessel for our soul to communicate with spirit, and in the moment to be free. And so that's all I got to say about that.
Oh my God, we're mastering freedom over here. This
Freedom.
is what I want to, I have, my brand is called freeyourcreativity.org, because I believe that creativity is spirit speaking through you. And I actually just wrote an email as you were coming over, and he's like messaging me like, can I get you some coffee, or can I get you something from the Hidden Garden before I come over? And I was sending my email, and it was exactly what you just said, of like, you are a vessel. Like, what I want to transmit to everyone through this podcast, through my offerings, through my programs, through my presence, is that you are a vessel for spirit to speak through you. And if you're going through a challenging time, actually, this is still your connection to spirit. It is through that contraction. So you said clean, messy, clean. Like, I really love cleaning my house. I don't have OCD, but everything does have a place. But like this morning, everything was trash. I knew my buddy was coming over. I'm like, okay. So I started that cleaning up process. And it is such a beautiful process, and it's such a beautiful mirroring of how life truly is. The ocean consciousness, right? The waves slap on the shore, recedes, it slaps on the shore, recedes. And like, that is the way of the life. And that's who I studied with. So I studied with a master. So I keep holding up my book, because honestly, like, it took a lot to read this book, and I don't talk about it enough. But it, the subtitle is One Woman's Ignoble Quest to Answer the Question, Who or What is God? And this is an unanswerable question, but we, as conscious creators who have sat with plant medicines, who walk with plant medicines, who study different forms, like I didn't just study yoga, or I didn't just read the Bible. Like, I've studied various forms, various pathways home, all paths lead to home, to try to understand spirit and God from multiple lenses. And ultimately, what we're concluding here, like, there is no conclusion to this question, but what we're concluding here is we are a vessel for what some might experience as God, what some might call source, what some might call the universe. And this is why I work with astrology now, because as above, so below. And so above us are these morphic fields, these balls of resonance that we're just like, oh, disregarding. But like, if you look up at the night sky, it's the only thing that exists, especially here because there's less light at night and we can really see the whole of the universe. We can see the Pleiades, we can see like speckles that are deep within the sky. And to think that they don't affect us is nuts. But when we actually look at their effect and we look at the consciousness that we have channeled onto them or has been channeled through them of like, hey, Pisces, the constellation Sagittarius, and we can understand what these archetypes mean as we relate to life itself. That's getting blurry again, but it's wild. It's wild all the connections we can make. And it's ultimately for us to be able to live this one life with a lot more presence, with a lot more care, and a lot more free. Because when I am experiencing suffering, when I'm experiencing a couple weeks of contraction, and I always do, and I'm talking about Chiron a lot lately, because if you look to where your Chiron is, you'll be able to see where your life actually brings this like physical pain. I'm like, ouch. I'm like, I'm relating with people because my Chiron is in the seventh house, the house of partnership and relationships. And so I'm relating with people and I'm like, oh, this hurts. And all people just seems to like have a great time, just like talking to people, relating with people, getting into business partnerships. You and Travis have such a beautiful business partnership, like beautiful humans calling in relationships that are flowing and loving. And I'm like, ouch. And looking to my Chiron placement has allowed me to see, okay, I am going to learn the message of relating. Like I am going to master at my deathbed, like, okay, like this relationship wound, this relationship story, because of the way that my astrological makeup is. But within Chiron, in the story and the myth of Chiron, if you want to check it out, I did a podcast episode on this specifically. But it's like everything is leading us to understand our blocks and the things that are contracting us and the things that have us, as our friend Andrew Avocado said, who I'm going to interview next week, pancaking in the bed. He said, you can pancake for 3 days, but then you got to get going. And it's true. And it's like, how many days have you been a pancake? How many days have I been a pancake? Or God, source says, hey, actually, I'm going to give you how long were you in pain?
2.5 years. Pancake.
It's a pancake. And like also the pain that you experienced last year of like you had to limp, you had to go slower because it's like, hey, sometimes the message is slow down, sit more, stop running so fast. And it's all a beautiful part of the journey because when we're a pancake, eventually we're going to get eaten. But like when we're in this contraction, the only other way is expansion. That's it. The in breath is the out breath. So we're taking an in breath, it's breath. We're going to then exhale because there's no other way. This is out of our control. It gets messy. We clean it up. We get in pain. We learn to heal ourselves. We get into conflict with another human. And I guess everybody does experience this, but I just seem to be like, oh, when it happens to me, like, why isn't everybody just treating me the way that I expect them to and ideally and like they're the nicest to me ever? And it's like, no, everybody experiences these things. Everybody's going to get a no on a sales call. Everybody's going to get rejection. We all experience these themes, but that ultimately, if we remember that the in breath is the out breath, that the ocean on the shore is receding only to come back with another wave, and like it's messy, we're going to clean it up, it's going to get messy again, what other kind of metaphors, but like, yeah, like if you're in a contracted state right now, the invitation is actually to get yourself inside of a room where these conversations are happening so that you can expand in a supported way. Like if we are at least mastering this breath, mastering this clean it up, mess it up again, like mastering relationships, mastering the in and the out, mastering duality, really. That's the monk of the monk, the mushrooms, and the toad. The monk that I studied with was a Vedantic monk, non-dualist. And ultimately what I learned is the only real way to learn non-duality, the oneness, is to just like fucking go for duality. Just like immerse yourself these things so that you understand the opposite ends so that you want to come back to equilibrium. You don't want to come back to equilibrium. You don't want to clean your house. You're not going to want to clean your house if it's messy. What do you got to say about that, Mr. Monk?
Well, this is actually the perfect segue into the teachings of the Buddha and Vipassana. Vipassana is a practice. They do these classic 10-day meditation retreats where it's 10 hours of 10 days of 10 hours of meditation a day, and it's a highly structured boot camp style therapy, essentially, that teaches you so much about the nature of suffering, about the nature of the mind, about how nothing lasts. Anything that you're experiencing right now, your emotional state, your current situation, financial situation, it will not stay the same. And as you sit for 10 days over 100 hours of meditation, which you can't even conceptualize how long that is when you're doing nothing and expanding space and time, you go through processes, and it might last a whole day, it might last a couple days. And if you just stay there and watch your breath and scan for sensations and essentially decouple from the identity of the thoughts coming and going, the impulses that those thoughts create, you begin to see that, wow, these thoughts that are in my mind are not me, and they have no lasting substance. And just like, there's another thing that this woman came up to my house the other day, and she's like, wow, all that you've accomplished, like, you must be so happy. And I was like, I thought about it, and I was like, is happy a fixed state? And I was like, I didn't really respond. I was like, actually today I was feeling sad, and I was feeling something of like sadness, and that's a valid emotion. And I feel like happiness is not a fixed state. We put a lot of weight on being happy all the time and embracing this positive emotion and just happy. Like, some of my most meaningful experiences were deep grief, was full rage, anger, of reclaiming these like bottom emotions that we want to push away because we want to be happy all the time. I am deeply fulfilled in my life. I have incredible amount of meaning, of purpose. I feel it every day, but every day I'm not happy. I'm navigating some internal process or some alchemical emotional thing, which is really my thing. What has led to a deeper sense of lightness in my life, a deeper sense of who I am, and a contentment, has been going into very heavy emotions. I had a lot of trauma as a child, maybe from other lifetimes, definitely in my lineage, that led me to believe that I was unworthy in a lot of ways, that really inhibited my relationships later in life, inhibited my ability to take action and feel confident about my business. And so my journey has been going into deep, heavy stuff that we typically like to push away. And again, with meditation, with these psychedelics, which I'm going to just continue to plug medicine because it's been my path. I would not be here in the level of fulfillment, of success, of I forgave completely one of the last experiences I had. Every cell in my body, I completely forgave my mother emotionally for all the pain that she's caused me over 38 years. And it was such a liberating feeling. And it was through medicine that I achieved that, like, not a mental I forgive you, but every cell in my body releasing the pain of decades of abuse, essentially. And so really allowing yourself to go into the depths, to the deeper that you feel pain, the deeper you can feel joy. And I really believe that. And also, if you've perpetuated patterns in your life right now that have led you to believe that you can't get out of them, just know that the seed only sprouts when it's ready. And you might be ready now. You might not be ready now. But don't beat yourself up in your life that you couldn't do something. Like, you couldn't have that relationship you wanted. You couldn't get over the self-sabotaging. You couldn't get over the unworthiness. You just aren't ready, and you might be soon. And just hold space for that seed to grow, because just as in the Tao teaches that everything is unfolding in the exact perfect time. The rose that's out there that is blossoming and blooming, opening only at the right time. It's never late, it's never early, it's on time with the fragrance that it carries, are the same governing forces that move this entire universe and our minds and the parts of ourselves that feel separate and the parts of ourselves that are seemingly like not ideal of what we want. And so just to be open for the gifts that doing deep internal work, doing childhood work can bring you, and it can bring your business. It can, when we heal those deep-seated wounds, all of a sudden we feel worthy of receiving that check or asking for that loan or taking action on our path because we're ready. And you might be ready when you're 60 years old, you know, like to think that you can compare your journey to anyone else's, even though we see it all the time on the social medias. Like, you have a blueprint within you that is going to be ready at that time. The fact that you're listening to this podcast right now and this transmission, if it resonates with you, you're ready to receive it. If it moves something, any small change that you can make in your life, like a millimeter shift in awareness or realization, again, why I feel like the medicines are so powerful is they give us just a moment outside of our perspective and outside of our general patterns of processing. These very small changes can lead to greater changes over time at the right time.
I feel like you were speaking to me.
Mm.
Maybe this is the right time to pull up the story of the toad because we're plugging medicine just for because it's moving through us. But this book, you know, and sure, this is a plug for my book as well. But um, this book is so funny because technically, or if you look at my brand or you've been following me for a while, I'm not like psychedelic girl. Like I, you know, teaching on this, I microdose, but I don't really talk about it. But this book that moved through me and channeled through me is about the different things I snorted, swallowed, and sucked on to be able to fix myself, with ultimately finding like the medicine within, ultimately finding that the humor, the irreverence, the just kind of bringing us level of lightness, even to these darker things, these bottom emotions, as you said, or these darker times. It's like, this is what this book is about. And so there's some heavy things that I talk about in here, some things that I reveal about my life and my traumas, but in a way that is relatable and touches on the part that we all desire, is to like laugh. And like, I think laughing is a fractal or an extension of happiness. And it doesn't mean that we're happy all the time, but that ultimately that arrow pointing towards joy is something that I aspire to, even in moments of deep constriction and contraction. And we both have felt depression. We both have felt moments of just like, what is the point? And I'm sure that so many of you out there have felt that because you're a deep feeler, because you're a conscious creative, because you're meant to help somebody through that dark night of the soul as well. I tell my clients all the time that their moments of uh, uh, mishaps and mess, it's because it's almost like taking the bodhisattva vow. I talked about this in the last interview as well. It's like almost like taking the bodhisattva vow unconsciously. Like, we are not um, going through these things in vain. Like, we are not going through these things if we're soulpreneurs, if we're facilitators of transformation in whatever way you want to, like whether you're doing it with tea, whether you're doing it with other plant medicines, whether it's your voice or your reframes or your coaching or your offerings of healing, the things that you've been trained in, the things you will be trained in, songs, different modalities, different points of transformation, however you're bringing about a transformation, you wouldn't be able to do that with someone if you haven't been there yourself. And so if you're gripping tightly to the pillow of like, when will this be over? Like, just know that this too shall pass. It will be over. And then what comes from it is a book. And so I met Matthew Michael, you know, probably when I was like, you know, because I'm a deep feeler, there's always like, Christina's always going through something, but it's so I can bring the medicine to my people. Ultimately, I'm always going through something, but I'm always at the heart of it, remembering that I am here to help people and guide people. So there's this seed of truth that like this will pass, and when it does, I will have a message for my people. I have a whole new book. I'll have a story to tell my clients. I'll have, information and experience that is going to help people, and that's the path of the high value guide, for better or for worse. But the better part is as you're in it, you can remember that. You can be like, this sucks right now, going to create really great content later on. But like ultimately, it's not just about the content, it's about that this podcast episode, even if it touches one person who is inspired to take action, again, that person that takes action and affects that other person, and that affects the other person, and affects the other person. It's this real ripple effect that the Bodhisattva vow is that I will not like ascend into the world of light. Like I will keep reincarnating and keep doing my mission until all souls are awakened. Like that's a pretty deep vow. And I believe that a lot of people that are resonating with me, like I'm not on the path of like I sat with a monk already. So the path of like gonna go take this like bodhisattva vow in reverence and very seriously. But I do believe that many of us have taken it in a past life. And so we're here and now we're on this journey, and now we're continuing to help people, and we're continuing to go through things and heal ourselves and heal in layers. And we're like, yeah, and like actually then like something comes and triggers us and triggers the memory, and things fall apart, and we're unhappy again. But ultimately, I smoked the wart secretion of a desert toad. And for a while, I was riding on that God consciousness, because it is the God molecule. And so I just wanted to open the book to a little paragraph. Now, I just opened it to it like a tarot card, like an oracle reading. But like the fun thing is that Matthew Michael was there when this was happening. So I think I'm gonna read this part. Not that, and like if you're going to take medicine, like do your research, like all of these things. Like not everyone has the same experience, especially with this medicine. And he's actually had quite scary experiences that made him took you off the medicine for a while.
Yeah.
And so it's we could talk about that in a moment, but it's not that you're gonna have this experience. It's just that like what this experience taught me was that we are actually always connected to source. God, the universe does have our back, but we actually forget, and we intentionally forget so that we can contract, so that we can learn new lessons, so that we can bring forth a level of wisdom that just wouldn't come if I just like was just high all the time. Like wouldn't come if I like didn't experience the full spectrum of life. So as I put my lips to the pipe in front of me and inhaled, the walls and all they symbolized began to quake, and I tunneled into a rainbow world of orgasmic bliss, unfolding and turning in on myself. I no longer had control of my body and no mind to speak of. I had the sensation that I just was, that I was one with it all. What I began to experience was not the picture perfect woman meditating in front of the sunset kind of bliss. I've never been one to go quietly, even in my blissful isness, and in total surrender to the experience. Language poured from my lips, and my body began to pray and swim. Remember that? You could also call it flailing. Writhing on the sacred mat, the popular phrase, "oh my God," poured from my lips. This term was popularized by every North American chick that pretty much did anything journal worthy on her travels. Oh my God, Jonas dumped Sarah today. Jonas being the long-haired traveler guy we met 2 countries ago, who we decided to hitchhike with to Morocco. Sarah had to eat a whole pizza just to feel whole again. Oh my God, right? I had only ever recently uttered this term in the height of orgasm. And here I was in a developing, colonized, and Christianized country, writhing and wiggling, arms outstretched, contracting and expanding in symmetrical movements, yelling, "oh my God," in what I was told later to be a blood-curdling tone. may I finish this one thing. So 5-MeO-DMT, also known as the God molecule, also known as the compound I just smoked out of what looked like a crack pipe, is known to give its participants a feeling of unity, oneness, and universal love. And even though I'd only stepped foot into a church thrice in my life, I was taken over by the Holy Spirit. I yelled into the ethers, "Oh my God." And as the sound of my voice rippled in intensity, I released years of constrained impressions of what it looked like to be one of the awakened ones. Pretty fun.
Wow. Yeah,
So
was there. Wow.
I had to protect my body with the pillow. So he was one of the like helpers. And not everybody loses control of their body, but I did. And luckily he was there because that can happen. So he had the pillow, and I actually only kind of remember from through him and other people there, but I orgasmed out of every cell of my body. Didn't I try to sleep with the? Didn't I try to rub my butt on the shaman?
You're riding him like a surfboard. You're like,
Riding God like a surfboard.
for sure.
So fun. Well, thanks for listening and thanks for being there.
Yeah. I have more to say on this. Can I
Yeah.
use that?
Yeah, of course.
That'll give us a trigger point to go edit out.
Yay.
If we edit.
Good job.
This is not the
That's not, don't pee in there. Or poop, whatever you're doing. God poops through us.
So, 5-MeO-DMT. When I was young, I had this burning desire to know what was the ultimate truth. I was very interested, just interested in God, religion. As soon as I found psilocybin mushrooms, I realized like, whoa, I'm onto something here. And I started studying yoga and yogic philosophy, which in a lot of ways teaches about everything is the fabric of one thing, and that one thing is this universal love that is the intelligence that we are all, the ocean that we're all a drop of. And so in my 20s, I was really deep in yoga practices, meditation, and I was consuming a lot of psychedelics. I was wanting to just penetrate higher and higher into the higher realms, and to understand samadhi, to understand the fundamental nature of who we are and what is God. 5-MeO answered that question for me. It was about 8 years ago in Costa Rica. I landed in the opportunity, just how chance just a chance thing. I didn't know much about the toad. I knew I wanted to try it because I had tried all the other entheogens and plant medicines, and I did not know what to expect. I hit the pipe slowly. I was very familiar with DMT and ayahuasca, and I hit the pipe and I laid back, and everything, it was a moment of total fusion, and it wasn't visual, but my entire being as a drop merged with the ocean, and I felt the visceral totality of being eternal and omnipresent and being infinite. And it felt like the most orgasmic experience of surrender. It was like letting go and being flooded with a million volts of love and just total trust and surrender. And I came back and all I could say was, wow, like, wow. And for about 7 days after, I was having full body, like in my dreams, I would wake up with just full body rolling orgasms. And, to me, God is love and God is unity. And it was a visceral experience of everything that I had wanted to know. I was like, this is a fact. I've now experienced this. This didn't come from a preacher. This didn't come from someone telling me how it is. This is my experience of how it is. And it felt true to me. So the circumstances happened that the medicine man that served me was coming to the lake here in Guatemala, and I decided this is the best thing in the world. Let's share it with everyone and be let's preach the good gospel. And so we ended up having over 100 initiations of 5-MeO-DMT at Arco-ISIS in 2018. This was early 2018. And I was immediately studying and learning protocol to serve this medicine. In high school, I probably took about 50 of my friends on their first mushroom initiate, like the first trip. I could talk to them and tell them and guide them through their trips. And it was just nothing for me. It was like so natural. And so I felt called to just share this medicine. What the medicine shared with me, the second time I had a ceremony was a little bit more murky, and it was a little bit weird. And I was left with this huge pocket of energy that was in my head. It felt like my head was off. And like 2 weeks later, I had this like bubble of energy inside of me. And then I had this huge emotional release. And that continued as I was studying to serve. I had my third experience. And by this time I knew what to expect. Like the first time you don't know, and there's nothing that can prepare you. No amount of plant medicine or any experience can prepare you for full non-dual experience. It's basically like a death and rebirth. Like you have to let everything go. And for that much love to enter you and you to become that much love, all of the resistance to that much love, all the trust needs to be there to receive it. And there needs to be a moment of absolute surrender. What happens is that medicine will find an emotional blockage and it will push that blockage out. And a lot of times it looks like a fire hose. It looks like people writhing and screaming or crying or having moments of just apologizing to the sun or whatever, apologizing, I'm sorry. And I think with medicine, the medicine will give you what you need, and it's not always going to be what you want. And it's not always going to be convenient for your ego structure and your identity, because you may have formed an identity around a pain body or a false sense of self in order to fit in, or that was conditioned to you by MTV, society, high school, wanting to be a part of the crowd. And so that can be very challenged. And what I later learned was that people can have very challenging experiences that can rock you to the core and make you question the most fundamental part of yourself, the idea of who you are and the construct of who you created to be you, either voluntary or involuntary through circumstance. So I went on to, have this relationship with the medicine, where the third one I had, the third separate experience was, I went into terror, and it was a low enough dose. I didn't take the full hit on accident. And I overcame it through power, personal power. And I felt like a beast when I came over. Like I was like, no, you're not going to take me. And I felt like fully grounded afterwards. And I felt like I reclaimed a part of my personal power that didn't exist before then. And then later, we went on to go serve. A friend of mine and I we were in Iceland, and we were serving this to the Icelandic community. And after serving, I decided to have another experience because I knew I wanted to confront the fear, because I knew that it was love. I knew that the absolute truth is union. I had experienced it in my body, and I wanted to get closer to that. Well, what happened with that experience was I did take the full dose, and it was the most terrifying experience I've ever had in the human body. And I was like on the edge of the non-dual experience, but I couldn't merge. And I was stuck in this like purgatory of half being an ego and half not being an ego. And I just went into full panic, like absolute terror. I was screaming for help. I was kicking and flailing. It was just terrifying. And then when I got down to like earth plane again, I was like, instantly got hard on myself. Like, why were you afraid? You should, like, you know, it's love. So I got really hard on myself. And my intention was to smoke it again, because they say if you have a really difficult experience, actually then the defenses are down, and you should have the experience of surrender when you're you fought the good fight and you failed, then you're done. And so then it's easier to take you back into unity. But I flopped across this field, and I felt like I got put in a bag and beat with a bat. So I never ended up taking that hit. And something fundamentally changed in me. Like, one, I accepted that I had the highest experience. Two, I was then previously focused on the heavens. Like, I was totally wanted to know the truth of the heavens. And what happened was I basically stopped eating medicine and psychedelics for like 2 years, and I got really physically oriented in the human body. It became more about the nuts and bolts of chop wood and carry water. Before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, we're still here in the human body. We're here for a reason. Yes, we are God and love, but we came here to be the drop. And we came here to be the imperfect human beings in the full like embrace of all of that. And that experience was not what I wanted, but I thought about that experience for 6 years after, and I became it was like, okay, now get your stuff together, get your retreat center that you've been building together while you've been blasting into the cosmos, every other week. And it was ultimately meaningful. It was not easy, but I am pretty well resourced with personal practices, meditation, I did begin to get back on that pony of plant medicine and overcome the fear of even like dipping into the visionary realms, because I was afraid it was going to take me all the way. It left me very open and sensitive. And so I think with the medicine path, it's easy to promote it because it has been so valuable for me in my life. The medicine path rewards the earnest seeker. And so when you are genuine in your intent, you can eat a high dose of psychedelics. You can eat the 5-MeO. You can smoke the 5. You can eat a huge dose of psilocybin when you have an earnest attempt. When you just want to hit the pleasure button, and a lot of times the medicine will give you the opposite, which is, okay, you're not feeling pleasure now because you need to feel this pain. And this pain is in the way of your pleasure and your joy. And so a lot of times people will want to be happy and they'll eat mushrooms, and it'll take them down into the underworld, into a momentary hell, where it will then give you a deeper sense of meaning of these things that are in the way of your joy. And so sometimes these experiences can discourage you on the path, especially the medicine path. And it's not for everyone. Not everyone is supposed to be melted to the core essence. Like, the journey ultimately will lead there. Like, we are going to let go of everything. Like, we are going to die. This type of medicine is death practice. And why death practice is important is then we stop, when we release the fear of death, then we can finally start living in the present moment and overcoming these small fears of relating, of taking the next step in our journey that might be scary, or owning up and being accountable for our actions in the past. Really, it's about making peace with the past of all the things, the errors, and the times we came up short, and the times we came up short, and forgiving ourselves and forgiving others, and making that alchemical space within us so that we can finally let go now, not just at death, but now. And this is kind of just tying back into the previous themes that we've talked about, is how to be free now. So that's been my journey with the deepest psychedelic. I have not had a full 5-MeO experience since, but I have had several ayahuasca experiences, about 9 of them, that took me to that place, because she wants to take me to the surrender state. And she's been very gentle with me, and she's like, it's safe to surrender. And I've gone deeper into some childhood stuff as a result. And it's a lifelong journey. So don't beat yourself up if you had a difficult time, whether it was on medicine or whether it was in your life. Like, you're a human, you're able to make mistakes, you're not perfect. And these things, when you find value in your mistakes, then you're constantly learning. When you didn't get the outcome you want with the girlfriend or the lover or the boyfriend, don't beat yourself up about it. What did you learn, and how can you apply that? And then you're constantly absorbing truth, and that will only accelerate your progress, I guess, of being more you and being more free from the conditioning that we're working through as being a human on this earth of Western culture and America and MTV and abusive parents and XYZ.
I'm going to title this MTV and Abusive Parents.
Yeah.
How Psychedelics saved me.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. And to actually forgive my mom, this was just a couple weeks ago, and I've been working with that for my whole life, of finding a place for that behavior. To receive it as a child was unbearable. To receive it as an adult was intolerable. And I decided I wasn't going to tolerate that behavior anymore. And in putting up that boundary, it ended up leading to the space where I wasn't compromising myself to appease my mom from a wounded place and to act like that behavior is okay. Because ultimately, behavior is not okay. Everybody, deserves love, and we don't need to tolerate certain behavior in our lives. The paradox about that was that because I went through that whole journey, I went into the deep rage and anger I had towards her. I went into a deeply wrathful state for 2 months of channeling rage and just getting it out of my body, because it had never had an outlet. That finally I had an experience where I was on an LSD trip at my parents' house, and I saw a painting that my mom painted on the wall. And it was the most beautiful piece of art I'd ever seen. And I could feel my mom's innocence and beauty in that painting, like I could never receive from her. And I wept over this painting that was beautiful, rainbow colored butterfly flower, sparkles, glitter. And I could just feel her essence, and I could feel her innocence. And within my cells, I have no more hatred or resentment or anything towards my mom. And it was just the greatest gift of, like, the question I ask myself now, because this happened about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Who am I now without all that anguish inside my cells? And who can I be? And what types of relationships can I have now in love and romance and connection? And even with my mom now, as a result of clearing that trauma and that forgiveness that came as a result of eating 2 hits of LSD, so
Don't be afraid to go there.
don't be afraid to go there. God, the universe, fortune favors the bold. Fortune favors the bold.
Fortune favors the bold.
Yeah.
Well, we have gone on this beautiful journey together in life and also in this podcast. I feel like I got some free therapy. Thank you so much. Like, speaking right to my soul. So I hope that you got like the same like inspiration to be more bold, and the things that I teach on. So as we're starting to close this beautiful journey together, like the things that I teach on are about you becoming more bold in your voice, in what you share online, but also offline, in you creating things, like boldly going after your dreams and creating something that is a little more bold. It's the audacity. Like, if someone isn't saying the audacity of two just like cuties just going out there, the audacity, you're just gonna build a retreat center on the edge of a mountain, the audacity. You're just gonna write a book about God, the audacity. You're gonna like sing a song that's unfinished on stage, the audacity. You're going to come to someone vulnerably and tell them how you feel, the audacity. Like there are different levels of fear, and we're all working with our own level of boldness. And so I'm making a promise to be more vulnerable, which is bold and scary for me. And I hope that you make the promise to yourself to go out there and create that podcast, to message me and join my program. This is bold, the audacity. You're going to invest in yourself when there's so many people that you could feed with that money. Like you're going to be able to feed so many more mouths when your sacred calling is fully feeding you and your family and your community. Like it ripples out. So just remember that it is bold to invest in yourself. It is bold to choose yourself and your own healing and your own creative expression. It is bold. And if someone isn't saying the audacity of you going out there and creating content and sharing your voice and expression, then I want to help you be more audacious. So give me a ring. First, read the book. If you want to join Homie in his tea experience, what do you got going on that you want to share with the people?
So my tea collection is available online. We ship worldwide. It's going to be in the comments below or the information, but it's www.puarmedicine. You can look up how to spell puar. It's PUERH medicine.com. We're on Instagram, puar_medicine. My Instagram is Matthew_medicine. And our Arco-Isis, my project on the mountain, is ARCOISIS Atitlan, ATITLAN on Instagram. And yeah, come visit us in Lake Atitlan. Stay tuned. I produce a lot of educational content, teaching about Chinese tea arts, teaching about meditation, about Tao, Buddhist values, Vipassana. And who knows what will happen next?
Who knows what will happen next? I'm like, can we do a retreat again? Even though we did a residency and years ago, the audacity of us.
The audacity.
The audacity of bringing everyone together to be together in creativity. And so many people, sacred calling, like you immersed from that, like bounced off from that. And so even though we might have had a hard time or we might have been going through our own things, me personally, I'll speak for myself. I might have been going through my own things, got held a few times, cried a few times, we expanded. But that's the nature of this journey of helping people. It's like you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be fully healed. Your wisdom, your presence, your stories are going to change somebody's life. So keep hearing our stories, subscribe here. That's fun to say, like subscribe here so you can keep hearing our stories and different stories from different people. And just know that someday you're going to come sit on this couch with me and tell your story. It's going to be amazing. So I'd like to end on that. But there's one thing I'd like to ask. I'm going to ask all of my guests, and we've kind of covered it too, but if you could succinct a message to your younger self.
This is perfect. This is a thought that I had in my head here.
Right.
For everyone out there, it takes a lot less energy to surrender to the moment than it does to hold on and force things. In the last 14 years of my life, in the last 38 years of my entire life, the greatest single obstacle that took me the most energy was my own insecurities, worries, not thinking that it's going to work. If I just got out of that way, and I understand that was important for me, because before you can surrender, you have to clean the closet out, and I hadn't done that yet. But it's a lot easier to go with the flow and to just trust than it is to fight. And this ties into the 5-MeO. This ties into life, to your aspirations. If you have a call in here and you get slow enough and it feels clear enough for you, go for it. Figure out what's the next thing and make that your life. Like when your life is tea and teapots, your life is about tea and teapots. When your life is about what somebody else is doing, or what's going on in the world that we can't control, you're going to be distracted, and it's going to feel, it's a very different life. Like I look at tea and teapots every day, and it's like, that's my obsession and I love it. It's like, that's my little world. And so only focus what you really want to have more of. And so
Writing is my world. Every day I write. Every day he tease.
I see.
And every day I tease. I tease. Well, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.